So, welcome, Matt. We're really happy to have you today. If you just want to quickly give us a brief bio, tell us a bit about yourself, and then we can get into your story.
That sounds great. It's great to be with you, Melissa, and Holly as well. So, brief background: I am a salesperson right now in my career. I lead a sales team at a relatively a decent sized company, and I play music on the side as a hobby. I have 3 kids, and I'm married, and we live in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Okay, so let's go right back to the beginning then.
All right, so I guess it's important to preface that since I was probably about 13 years old, I wanted to be a musician. Like that's what I wanted my job to be. And when I started listening to bands early on and just like really digging in, like trying to figure out how to play the songs on guitar, even though I didn't know how to do that, or on piano. And I just watched every video that I could of certain bands that I really enjoyed. And eventually, my parents bought me a bass guitar. So I took lessons on the bass guitar and wanted to like create a band. That was like my big dream. So I got in touch with a friend at school who played guitar, and we started playing music together. And after that, we figured like, okay, bass and guitar, it's cool, but it's just missing. It's like empty. It's missing something. And so we wanted to find a fuller band. So we ended up meeting another guitar player who was playing drums with someone else at our school. So this is all in high school, and we brought everyone together essentially and created a band. But we didn't have a singer. We needed a singer, and we tried out a few people. It didn't work out, but we heard about this kid in school who sang in the church choir. And he was supposedly really good, but we didn't know. So we wanted to bring him to a practice. But we had a rival band at our school, and this rival band was trying to get him as well. And so it was a bit of a competition who could get this guy to come to their band practice faster. Thankfully, my bandmate and I, we won out, and we were able to get him to our band practice. And he ended up singing and was great, liked all the same bands as us, and we hit it off. And so from there, we just started playing music, and it was awesome. I came to learn like maybe a year later or 6 months later that this young man was a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And, he started telling me things like, hey, why are you drinking? Like, why are you living this way? Like, that's stupid. And he would kind of talk like that, just really brash about it. And I just remember thinking like, who is this guy and telling me how to live my life? Like, what's he doing? And it took a little bit of time and a number of arguments before I was like, okay, I'll take him up on it. So I ended up going with him to some church activities, went to like dances and things like that with the youth. And I was about 16 at the time. And so this was back in Canada, and it was just a lot of fun. I just remember thinking, these people are awesome, and these youth are really cool, and they're not drinking or doing drugs, and they're just so fun. And I was like, well, maybe this is something for me. So I started, joining more activities. I ended up playing piano for my friend. His name is Grant. So I ended up playing piano for him at church one time. It's my first time to church. I was wearing jeans and a baggy t-shirt. And I went up there, and I just remember the older folk looking at me like, who is this guy? And why is he going to play the piano? And he's not wearing the right clothes. But I went and did it. And we sang, Grant sang A Poor Wayfaring Man of Grief. And I played like this very jazzy rendition on the piano of A Poor Wayfaring Man of Grief. And that was my first experience with the church, just going in and not knowing what to expect or anything. And then I continued to go to activities and to church, and I would just sit in the back. I remember not wanting to like have anyone come and talk to me, just explicitly like I'm trying to figure this out for myself on this spiritual journey. And I was probably about 17, 18 at this time. And I'd grown up Catholic, and I I was like at this point in my life, like previously to this, I was like not religious at all. Didn't really know what I believed. Didn't have any foundation that, I thought God was there, but I didn't really understand anything about that. Um, And so I just wanted to learn. So I just sat in the back of church, and all the other families would be there. And then I just leave right when everyone would like get up from the last prayer. I'd like leave right at between the last prayer and like the very end. And I would get up and go just so that no one would talk to me, because I didn't want to commit to anything. You know what I mean? I just wanted to be there and to experience and learn. And so that went on for a little while, until a friend of mine's dad was the ward mission leader of the ward. And he like cornered me in the foyer at one point. He's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" He's like, "Why don't you meet with the missionaries?" And I was like, "Oh shoot, I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready for that." He's like, "It'll be fine. They're not scary." And it was some sister missionaries in the ward, and they were, as he said, very nice. So I met with missionaries for about 4 months, and while we were meeting, they challenged me to read the Book of Mormon. When I first got the challenge, I was kind of like, okay, I'll do it in like half-hearted way almost. I started like kind of reading it, but it was Old English, and I was like, I'm a semi-reader, at that time, but like the Old English, I was like, I don't know how to really navigate this. I don't know what any of it means, but I'll try and read it. So I read it for a little bit, and then one of the missionaries was like, well, you've got to read it with real intent. Like, you've got to want to know if this is like a book of God, if it's true. And I, I remember like, okay, like, well, how do I do that? Like, trying to figure that out. And they read me Moroni's Promise, and I think Moroni 10:3-5, and said like, real intent and open heart, essentially, and really wanting to know. And if you want to know, like, you'll do something about it. And I think that was like the big hiccup for me during the time. Like, I didn't want to commit to anything. I didn't know that I didn't know what I wanted. And so I was trying to figure that out. Right. But they challenged me one lesson. They're like, Matthew, if you pray sincerely to know if this is true, like, I promise that God will answer your prayers. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll do that. I'll try. I'll like give it my shot. If it's true, if God answers my prayers, great. I like got an answer. If he doesn't, okay, I can move on with my life and know that this is a cool thing, and it was good. And I can keep going and figure something else out, spiritually speaking. So I went to church early one morning, and I went to sit in the foyer, but like closer to the bishop's office. This was in Surrey, BC, in Canada. And I sat in one of the comfy chairs out there, and it was before church. No one was really there. There probably was someone there because the doors were open, but I didn't see anybody. And so I just sat there and was like, okay, I'm gonna give this a shot. So I opened up the Book of Mormon, and I said a prayer, and just a very simple prayer, like, "Dear Heavenly Father, dear God, is this book true? If it is, please let me know." And so, I said my prayer, and then just like flipped some pages. I don't even remember where I was reading. And I felt the Spirit, what I would describe as the Spirit now, but I just felt this powerful feeling, just overwhelming sense of like light and peace and love and comfort, and just like, it's almost like hard to describe, but like those are all the words that I would use to describe the feeling that I felt. And I'd felt it one other time before. I was in a Sunday school class, and there was a teacher. His name's Don, and he was teaching about Jesus Christ and his atonement. And I knew about Jesus. I knew he died. I'd been to Catholic church a couple of times. I didn't really understand what it all meant for me. And when Don McGonigal was teaching about how Jesus died for us and what it means, like what the atonement means for us in terms of change and grace, that the things that he was saying, I don't even remember all of the details of it. I just remember feeling like in that moment, God knew me, Jesus Christ died for me, and it was the most powerful feeling that I'd ever felt up to that moment. And when I read the Book of Mormon, I and prayed about it and had that answer to prayer, what I would describe as an answer to prayer. It was that same powerful feeling of light and love and comfort and joy and just the things that Galatians describes as the fruit of the Spirit. And that moment is where I realized, like, God is real, and this book is his book, and this is where he wants me to be. And so I ended up joining the church, and I was still playing an indie rock band. So we would go and tour and travel, go to churches in the different places we went. Cause I was, at that time, the band had kind of changed. It was Grant. And then we had a few brothers from Vancouver, Joe and Steve. And we would go and travel and play shows and all across Canada, America, and China. And it was an incredible journey for me. I remember when we'd go to certain places, we'd meet members of the church. And I just remember specifically, there's so many amazing families that I couldn't just list one, like your family included, Melissa, that we were able to meet, and Holly. I remember one in Quebec City. His name was Bishop Remy. He was the Bishop of Quebec City. And we went to church. We actually slept in the parking lot because we just were so poor at that time traveling. We slept in the parking lot, and we got up the next morning, and it was church. It was Saturday night, and we'd driven from a show Saturday night in another city, and then ended up in Quebec City. And we walked into the church, like brushed up our hair. We had really long hair at the time. So imagine me with like this length hair. And we'd like brushed up our hair. And then I was wearing like just a Christmas sweater. Like that's all I had. It was just cold, freezing, dead of winter in Quebec City. And we go in and sit down in the front row. We always did this. I don't know why, but we went and sat in the front row, and you could just see the bishop, like, who are these guys? Like, what are they doing here? This is so funny. And so he came up after and talked to us and was like, hey, like, where are you coming from? Why are you here? And just had a great conversation with him. We didn't have a place to stay. We told him we slept in the parking lot. He's like, oh, come stay with us. How long are you here? We're like, another day. He's like, come stay with us tonight. Stay here. And so he invited us into his home. He was him and his wife, and then they had a daughter with special needs. And it was just a beautiful family. And we went down into their house, and they gave us a tour of the house and set us up with beds and everything. And I remember he had a picture in his basement. It was just an amazing, beautiful picture. I was like, oh, I love that picture. He's like, do you want it? I was like, okay, yeah, I'd love it. He's like, okay, it's yours. It's like, wow, that's so nice of you and so random. You're just giving me a picture. And then we were going to leave the next morning, and he had left a letter for us because he had to go. And he just talked about how great it was to have us there. We ended up, just a little backtrack, we ended up playing songs for him and his wife and his daughter, and just a great experience that night. And then the next morning we woke up, and he had left us a letter. And in the letter, just a beautiful letter about how nice it was to have us and how grateful they were for us. And we were feeling the same way. And then he's like, oh, and here's $100 for dinner for you guys, and gave us $100 bill and then sent us on our way. And that's the kind of experience that I had with saints everywhere I went. Just the most loving kindness that I've ever experienced in my life, just almost for no reason besides, I think that they've truly believed that the commission from Jesus Christ, that like do unto others is, and just like the love and sharing the love with other people, like these people that we met did that. And so anyway, long story short, we did this for a long time. At one point I had this like feeling inside that like something wasn't right. And it's a very weird thing if you've experienced like doing something wrong and knowing you've done something wrong, and you kind of feel like guilt a little bit inside. I was feeling this, but I wasn't really understanding why. It's kind of weird. Like I don't think I did anything wrong, like sin wise. I think God was prompting me to do something and to change my path a little bit. And I was not open to hearing it. It's kind of a theme for me. It takes my hard head, so it takes me a little while. But over time, my heart started to become a little bit softer to this message. And it was a very hard thing for me to accept because I had, as I told you before, like wanted to be a musician my whole life. It was my dream. And God was telling me that I needed to go on a mission and leave my band. And this went on for like a year and a half. And it's not a great way to live in this disconnection with God. I don't recommend it. It was very hard and difficult on my spirit, and it impacted everything in my life, just my relationships, my emotions, all of it. And I think it's because I knew I needed to do something, but I was afraid, if I'm being very honest with you, that's why it was so difficult. So I just remember like thinking like, well, I'm singing songs about Christ. We're singing "Near My God" to the everywhere we go, and in these crazy bars and dark situations, just like silencing a bar with "Near My God to Thee" and singing 4-part harmony, right? So it's like really beautiful stuff. And I'm like, is this not like my talents? I'm giving my talents. Is this not what you want from me? And the answer for me kept coming back to like, you need to go on a mission, and you need to experience this. This is your path and where you need to go. Don't fight it. And um, I kept fighting it for a long time, and then we were on tour in Calgary. I remember sleeping, like we were sleeping with a couple of friends at their house in a massive house. Maybe they were like house sitting. I can't remember exactly, but we stayed with them. Very nice people, and I was just like praying. It was after a show, and I remember praying like, I'm not feeling great about what I'm doing. Like I love music. This is what I want to be doing, but I'm not feeling as great as I should be about it. Um, and I just remember the answer is clear as day. It's like, you need to serve a mission. And so I said, like, I just submitted at that point. I said, okay, I will. Like, if you open the doors for me to do that, I will do it. It's like not going to be easy because I'm entrenched in a band and it's like a business, and it's not easy to like get out of that. So I remember telling Steve that night, and I told him like in the van, and I said, Steve, I got to tell you a secret, because he had served a mission, and I was like, this is my secret. He's like, what the heck? He's like, you should go. And I was like, what? Like, what about the band? He's like, dude, you need to go on a mission. If you feel called to go on a mission, you need to go. And that gave me a little bit of courage, but I didn't tell everybody, and I kind of made it this tiered approach where I was slowly but surely telling everyone. We were on a tour, we were recording. There was just so many things happening. It was very difficult to navigate that. Eventually, I did, and we did one last tour across America, and then came back, and I ended up leaving on my mission like 2 days or 1 day after my last show. So it was quite a journey. So I served in Colorado, so Denver, Colorado South Mission.
You were doing something that you felt was what you wanted to do your whole life. And then you have this prompting that's something that maybe the world would view as you're not doing what's best for you. You know how that's kind of like a message nowadays? Sometimes we get promptings that on the surface you might interpret as like, why would God send me on a path that doesn't seem to be my best life? Or you know what I mean? Or even people reflecting back on their life and decisions that they made with the Spirit, but now maybe they view it differently, and they view it as, I wish I hadn't have done that. What was it then that made you see aligning your will with God's of like, this is actually the right path for me, even though the music one felt good in so many other ways? Do you know what I mean?
It's a good question. I think that a couple of thoughts here. One of them is, I think I'd been fighting it for so long and just like not feeling my best self, even though I was doing what I thought was right. I was not feeling my best self. I felt like there was something missing. And when you feel something missing, I think that many of us feel that way, this feeling in our lives of something missing, whether it's small or something big in my case, where it was like a life-changing decision. It can be day to day. Maybe we said something unkind to somebody, or maybe we raised our voices with our kids. Doesn't matter what it is. We might feel a prick in our heart about it. There's nothing better than healing that and doing something that helps to heal that prick or that sting or whatever that feeling might be, that you're not feeling right about something. And so I think that for me, there was this desire to like feel right with God. And so I think that that's one element of it, was just wanting to be right with God. And I knew if I felt right with God, that everything else would work out. I just had this faith and trust at that time in my life that if I just did that one thing, that he would take care of the rest of the things. And if I was to be a musician, like the doors would open back up. Or if I was to, be in the band again, the doors would open back up and it would all work out. And if it didn't, then the path that I was on was the right one, because I felt right with God. And so I think that's one element. Another element, a little bit more interesting, is maybe not more interesting, but more kind of like funny, is when I started to go on this journey of like saying I was going to go on a mission, you have to talk to your bishop and you have to go through this process of stake president and all of these things. And you have to do all these shots. And there's just a whole slew of things you have to do. I remember meeting with my branch president at the time. He was amazing. And I remember meeting with him and he was like, well, Matthew, it's interesting that you want to go on a mission. Like, you're already doing missionary work by being in the band, singing songs about Christ, teaching people who are around you guys that, the church is for everyone and it's welcoming for everyone. And there's a place here for everyone. And you guys are doing a great job of sharing that message with people and bringing people into the fold of Christ. Why serve a mission? Like, you're already doing that. He's like, I don't think you should serve a mission. Actually, I think you should get married, find someone and keep doing what you're doing. And so that's my advice to you. And I was like, the heck? That's not what you're supposed to tell me. You're supposed to tell me, like, go on a mission. Like, I'll help you out. I just remember thinking, like, what is he talking about? Like, don't go. Of course now I'm going. What do you mean? I'm telling you I'm going. He's like, yeah, I don't think you should go. And I think that I don't know if he was actually genuinely trying to do reverse psychology, if he genuinely meant that. I really don't know to this day, but it worked on me as though reverse psychology, because I was like, oh, wait a second. Like, I don't have to go. And he's telling me I shouldn't go. And he's like challenging me. And there's this obstacle in the way now. And almost like that created a chip on my shoulder, almost like, well, yeah, I am going. Like, you're not going to stop me, like it was a different, is a different kind of thing. And so I think because of those experiences, like wanting to be right with God, and then the experience of someone kind of pushing me away from going, who is in authority to like help me go or not go, were two things that kind of propelled me that way.
I couldn't help but think too the whole time. There's a talk that was just given by Elder Suarez in General Conference, and it's such a beautiful talk. And kind of the catchphrase he keeps using is, what works for thee works for me. And it's about aligning your will with God's. And I feel like that piece of your story drives home that message.
I also love that you didn't have any pressure from anyone. It was just like all you. So you can't look back and be like, I felt pressure that I should go, or guilt because everyone around me was saying, you should go.
It's interesting because a lot of my friends and people that I knew, and even people that I served with, were like promised the thing or pressured because of a girlfriend to go on a mission. And I had nothing. I had no strings. No one. Everyone's telling me not to go. My dad told me not to go. People in my immediate family were like, "Don't go." My branch president's telling me not to go. Some of my friends were telling me not to go. Just a series of things. All right, so it's interesting. I just didn't have any pressure to go. It was like actually, in fact, probably the opposite.
So do you want to just walk us through the next kind of steps, like your mission, if you want to talk about that?
So I went to the MTC and I didn't know what to expect. In fact, my mom actually flew down with me. She's not a member of the church. She flew down with me and we toured Salt Lake City, went to all the sites. We had really kind ladies like riding us up to the top parts of the elevator or top parts of the church headquarters, and helping us see all the sites, meet the people. Like, we had kind of like tour guides because we had no idea what we were doing. And I just wanted my mom to be there with me, like to see me off, because I wouldn't see her for 2 years, and I thought that would be the right thing for a son to do. And I was glad that she joined me, and it was a great experience. We had one of her friends growing up is a member of the church, one of her really best friends when she was a kid in Alberta. And so she came down, met us, and, was there for my mom once my mom dropped me off at the MTC. So it was a nice kind of moment. And then I went to the MTC, like, honestly, feeling like I knew nothing. Like, I had my testimony and that is it. I had no idea about like how to teach the restoration, how to teach the plan of salvation, any of it. Like, I learned about it. I read my scriptures. In fact, it's funny, Melissa, I remember being at your guys' house one time and your dad like telling us about how he had never missed a day of reading the scriptures. And that left such a strong impression on me that I went back and I was like, okay, I'm going to try and read the scriptures every day. Obviously I failed, but he's like, he did it after his mission. So I was like, okay, maybe I have some grace and like, I'll just do it after my mission. And so anyway, I just remember that leaving such a strong impression on me before I went. Anyway, so it was at the MTC, just really struggling. One of the things that was hard for me was there's just all this information, and like, I felt like the teachers like were expecting something, like, how you just like a what's in my hand type question. Like you feel like they just are looking for something. And so anytime I'd answer, it would be like the wrong answer, the one that they weren't looking for. So I was like feeling really discouraged at the MTC my first few days there. And I remember my MTC teacher, one of them was there. I had a few. One of them was like, Elder Mazinkowski, this isn't about you. This is about Jesus Christ. You don't need confidence in yourself to do this. You just need to have confidence in him, and everything will work out. And I was like, whew, that was this strong and powerful message and rebuke and beautiful message all at the same time, all wrapped in one nice present. And it was so powerful. It changed the way I thought about myself. I stopped thinking about myself as, like I have to be this person and do this thing, and more of, how am I doing what Christ wants me to do? How am I doing what God wants me to do? How am I doing there? And if I'm doing that, then I should have all the confidence in the world. And it didn't come overnight, Holly and Melissa. It was something that came over time. But more and more as I tried to live my life like Christ, the confidence that I felt in him and the words that he would give me just started to come. And anyway, MTC, and then I got to the mission, and I got paired with somebody who was 5 years younger than me. So I was 24 when I went on my mission, and my companion was 19. So it was like my little brother was my first companion. He was my trainer, and he is still today, and was the most purest person I've ever met in my life. And it wasn't what I had expected out of a training companion on a mission, but it was what I needed. And he was an incredible human being, and he would shine my shoes, make my bed, like you name it, he would do these amazing things. And I was like, does this guy not like me? Is this why he's doing this? Or is just this who he is? No, he really is that way. So we'd go out, and he had never really tracted. He had a companion before me that they tracting, like going out knocking doors. He had a companion before me that didn't know and didn't want to do that. And so he was kind of shy to that sort of thing. But I was like first day out here, we're going to give a Book of Mormon away, Elder. Like, we're going to go preach the gospel here. This is what we're called to do. We're going to go talk to someone about Jesus. And we went out and we saw a guy working on his car, and he was there working on his car. He's not going anywhere. So we're having a conversation with him. And we went in and gave him a Book of Mormon by the end of it, and testified of it, and asked him to read it. And he said he'd read it. And then we told him we'd come back. And we didn't know what we were doing. No training on how to set a meeting and how to set an appointment and how to go in and do these things with him. We just went for it. And it was a blast. I just remember feeling like I'm doing what God wants me to do. And I feel right inside. I feel right with God. And there was just no better feeling than that for me. It was just pure bliss almost. I'll tell you just some brief things about the mission, and then I'll move on quickly. I think the mission for me was absolutely life-changing. And this is the reason why. One of it was gaining confidence in Christ, not in myself. That was a huge learning lesson for me. The other one was dedicating my life to serving people and helping God's children. And it's so interesting. When I was on the mission, I felt the most joy I felt in my life, because I was not thinking about myself. I was not stressing about finance. I was not worried about what was going to happen the next day. Everything was in a service to God and to helping people. And that kind of experience just changed the way that I thought about things and what was important in life and why. And anyway, I have probably a million stories that a podcast like this would be 10 hours long. So for the sake of that, I will also just say the mission gave me an experience where I could feel closer to Jesus Christ than I ever had. I could feel him working in my life, from when I would be riding a bike up a huge mountain or a hill and just totally exhausted, working 12-hour days and just burnt out. But and not feeling like I had any more energy in me to push, and then just feeling the grace of God come over me. And somehow, the tires kept spinning, the pedals kept going, and I was able to get up the mountain. Just certain moments like this where I knew that Christ was there, and I knew that he was helping me do his work. And that was life-changing for me. So to move on, I came back from the mission. I didn't know what I wanted to do, right? Because during the mission, all my bandmates had gotten married. They were having kids. It was they were moving around the country. It was just, I I didn't know what I was coming back to. They were like, the band was disbanded, right? So I didn't know what I was going to do. But like my last last two transfers, one of my companions said to me, like, Elder Mazankowski, have you thought about applying for BYU? It's like, no, I haven't. I don't think I'll get in, and I wasn't even thinking about it. He's like, you should apply. It's like, okay, well, I'll take your advice. You're a good man. I'll take your advice. So I applied, and funny thing, I had done school before in Canada, and I got 24 credits done. I had terrible grades, by the way, in college, just terrible because I was so focused on music. But I had 24 credits, and then I went to apply, and you can apply as a transfer student, but you need to have 24 credits to do that. And I was like, oh, great, okay. Well, I have 24 credits, so God works in mysterious ways, and so was able to go to BYU, and I think that was another moment for me that was really life changing. It's like an extension of the mission. I got to teach at the MTC. I got to be a investigator at the MTC. I got to experience what it's like to have prayer like every day in class, and just such a unique and different schooling experience that I'm so grateful that I got to have. It's just it feels like such a fluke that I even got to be there. So many people apply and they are not able to get into that school, and I just felt so honored and privileged that they would even accept me with my terrible grades. And it was again another life-changing experience. And so came to BYU, and while I was here, I had kind of a secondary, maybe a more primary reason of coming here. The girl that I had dated on and off before the mission and had started writing at the end of my mission lived in Utah, and so I really wanted to be in a place where I could see her, and whether it was meant to be or not, we could try to be together. And so it's funny, her brother ended up serving his mission in Vancouver, and so I did a mini mission with him and one of my friends at one point. And so we knew each other. He knew of my band, and so he'd sent the CD back to his family, and they listened to our music and stuff. And so when we came to play in Utah, that's where we met, was one of our shows in Salt Lake. So we hit it off from there, and dated on and off while I was in the band. And we both went on missions at the same time. And so it was like kind of convenient, I'd be coming back. She just came back 5 months earlier. And so, I got to go to BYU, and we hit it off. We got married like 2 months into me being in Provo, and started, our life together. We had our first child pretty early. Our son was born 1 year to the day of our anniversary. So we celebrated our anniversary and our new baby boy's birth in the hospital with some Martinellis. The nurses brought in some Martinellis for us, so it's pretty great of them. Only in Utah. I mean, I think Canada might have been champagne, but Utah's Martinellis. And so, which we were appreciative of. So we had our first son then, and then our daughter was born in 2018, so a year later. And we were so grateful. We had these beautiful kids, and work was up and down. I had joined a startup, and it was a chaos, and so it was very busy, very stressful. I was doing school at the same time, and we just had kids. It's probably the most stressful time of life. And navigating was very difficult. But I remember, like, I read the scriptures, I prayed every day. We went to the temple as often as we could. And those were some of the things that brought peace to us during those really trying times and challenging times. Unfortunately, it didn't get any easier for us. We ended up having a third child, but he passed away 20 hours after he was born. This was there are hard things that we go through, and then there are really hard things, and there are like impossible things. And this was probably the most impossible thing. Our hearts were completely broken, shattered. The meaning of life and everything we knew, just very confusing. This was about 2 years ago now, just over 2 years ago. And I still to this day, I don't think I'm like fully healed from this. Like, I have faith, I have hope. There are all these things. My belief leads me to feel confident that I will see him again. But there's something about losing a child and not having them here that is it's just really devastating. And if you let yourself, it can take you down some really dark paths. And so that was one of the more recent struggles that we have gone through. And it's I try to think of like some of the positive things. Like I remember going to the temple right after, and just like seeing a vision of him with his family in the spirit world, and taking comfort in that, and still feeling like, why, God, like why did you have to take my son? Like I wasn't ready for that.
Yeah. We have the gospel, and I don't know how people do it without, but it's still a roller coaster, and I don't think it's something that people understand unless they have experienced it. It can feel the exact same as the day it happened, like just out of nowhere. And so it's
Yep.
not something that like the gospel helps, and there's so much help available and strength available, but those feelings still come, and it's something that we have for the rest of our lives. Thank you for sharing that with us. How do you feel looking back at your life? And the whole time I'm just thinking it's such a cool thing to hear someone's story and how they were guided. And have you ever thought about looking at your life and how you were guided to where you are, and pictured your life, how it would have been if you hadn't have done one of those things, or like just recognizing how the Lord has guided you and prepared you for where you are now?
1,000%. I think it's fascinating to think like if I didn't make this decision, where would I be? Like if I didn't choose to join the church, where would I be today? I think honestly, I joked with a friend, like I'd probably be in like one of those bands in the bars in Vancouver, like just like long hair, old man rocking out, like just like totally not where I am right now. And it is fascinating to think about our choices determine our destiny, and what we choose to do with our lives in terms of work, or in terms of faith and belief, or in terms of mission and impact socially, whatever it might be, how we choose to interact with people. All of this my life has changed the way that I think about things. The experiences in my life have changed the way I think about it. And I don't have regrets. Like, to be honest with you, Melissa and Holly, I don't have any regrets in my life. And I feel grateful to not have regrets. I don't feel like, oh, I wish I would have done that. Like, I felt like I did the things in the moments that I was prompted to do those things. For the most part, I think there's like small things, but like, for the big things, like it took me a minute to get in line, as you know, but I did, and was able to do that. And from those experiences, like my life changed for the better, I believe. And so I think Steve Jobs talks about this, like when you look back in your life and you see the dots, you can connect the dots, and it makes more sense when you do that. And as I've been like thinking about this in preparation for talking with you, I'm writing a book right now about the band's history, and this is like all top of mind stuff for me right now. And so I'm like thinking about all these connections that have been made, and even connections that came up later as I moved to Utah, like meeting people that I knew through the band and all this stuff. It's just amazing. And what it leads me to believe is that God has a plan for me. And if God has a plan for me, then he has a plan for everyone. And it's a personal, perfect plan for us. It's not one that is without wounds, or without hardship, or without immense sadness. And it's also not one without joy. I think it contains all of the above. If we'll choose to follow him and the promptings of the Spirit, I think that it will lead us down these beautiful paths, as the Book of Mormon so eloquently talks about, is in the wilderness. And I think that is, for me, been my experience in my life with this. And looking back on this, I can see like, yeah, that was the way that it was for a reason. And I am personally better off. And hopefully those, maybe it's not perfect. It's definitely not perfect, but hopefully those who I've been able to engage with and have a relationship with and communicate with have felt the same way.
I really just enjoyed hearing your story. I didn't really know much, so it was all new. I could listen to these stories all day. But thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome. It was really nice to be with you guys. It's good to see you again. It's, been
Yeah.
years. I wish we had more time, but I'm
Yeah.
grateful for the time that we had. Thank you.